Tell us about yourself, Mr. Ron, the leader of the show, DJ Ron.
Well, I don't. There's a triunity, right?
Oh, yes, D is for Dana, J is for Jeff, and Ron is for Ron.
Right,
DJ
right,
Ron.
right. Yes, exactly. So, that is the truth. The truth is, for me, I think there are times, right, where you can say, I appreciate being able to have a conversation. I appreciate being able to have a dialogue, an in-depth dialogue with people, and being able to share ideas, whether we agree or disagree. Because Jeff, you and I, over the years, a lot of years at this point, we've disagreed on some things, right?
Yes.
Would you say a lot of things?
Um, it's very hard to figure you out at times because sometimes I think you're serious, other times I think you're messing around. So, in the midst of that type of personality that you have, sometimes I wonder who is the real Ron. But I would say we are orbiting around a similar something, but we do have different differences.
Yeah. Well, there are. I mean, gosh, should we talk about like personalities, like Myers-Briggs? I mean,
Well, I would say, like, for example, something I'm thinking right now. I wonder about how well this would do as a show that anyone would listen to. And so because of that, I kind of think that there should be some sort of topic, or there should be some sort of something here. There needs to be something rather than us just kind of having moments of dead air as we kind of wonder why we're even on the call.
Ron did have a topic though for this week.
yes, I did. Yeah, I was gonna say once again, Dana. Um, Goodness, Jeff. I hate to break it to you, but Dana, in a lot of ways, gets it.
Yeah.
Am I woke?
Yeah, you're woke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She's so woke she is sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. With the with mother of eight. Yeah, totally. No, I get it. But I didn't. No, I did have a topic tonight, Jeff. It's not like we're just spinning dead air. I mean, and not only that, but um, there's a time, right, when you start doing things and you say, hey, I kind of like this format. I'm going to try something. I'm going to try to be creative. I'm going to try to use, the things that I feel like I'm gifted in or whatever. And I'm going to try to give it out and put it out there. And inevitably, right, with any kind of project, art, business, and I'll put everything into the category of art, including starting businesses. So I think of everything in terms of people creating things, and this, like anything else, is a project. And so there is, of course, the time that you say, I'm going to start this project, and there's some rough drafts. There's some, kinks in the, in the rope
Kinks in the rope or the
or the
arm.
wire or the wire or the arm, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
bottom line is
Fine.
bottom line is for me those things I don't find those things discouraging. I find those things as you learn from those things. Um, I enjoy kind of listening back and going, okay, what can I do a little bit better? How can I be more clear about what I'm trying to say, or the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing, or anything like that, right? I mean, there should be some of that. Do you agree?
That's fine. I'm saying that we're not doing anything yet.
Okay. Well, so let's just get started then and talk about what I wanted to talk about, because there have been times where you say, well, in admittedly, you have wanted some kind of direction, some kind of format, some kind of solid format, and you've requested that over and over again. And I I've noticed that, and that for me is a good thing in the sense that I've wanted that same thing, but I haven't committed to any particular topic, other than in the beginning the flat Earth thing, that which I thought would just be fun to talk about. But I haven't had any particular topic that I wanted to commit to or explore. But as anything else, like there's a starting point. So I wanted to talk about tonight, which I sent you a message about the push for diversity. And to be more specific, diversity when it comes to race relations within certain settings in society. For instance, there's always a push for diversity on college campuses, and making sure that all races, or at least known races, are represented in some particular way. So, for instance, an Asian community, and they need to be represented. An African American community, they need to be represented. Um, Caucasians, they need to be represented. Mexicans, they need to be represented. Hispanics, whatever you want to categorize people as. But everybody has to have this representation in these settings, and I'm not sure exactly why. So that's kind of my thing. I look at it as there's definitely nothing wrong, but it seems like kind of natural that people kind of get together in certain settings, but they also segregate in other settings. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So the push as though it's a problem, I'm not sure what to really make of that. So,
Well,
I mean, my question, I guess my real question is, I don't really see a problem in society that we're not a multicultural system. I think we are. I mean, there's it just in everywhere you go, you see a mix of people. I don't see this big, huge um, lack of diversity in anywhere. In any setting, in the workplace, in the grocery stores, I mean, in schools, for the most part, you see a kind of a wide range of different races and types and peoples, all that good stuff.
so I think what needs to be stated, given that racism does exist, before you say what you're saying, is that you are not in opposition to diversity. You have more of a doesn't matter either way kind of opinion about it. In other words, you're not opposing diversity. You don't think there's anything wrong with diverse groups. You're just saying there's nothing wrong with non-diverse groups. You're just
Well,
kind of saying what's the, on the one hand, I'm guessing you can tell me if I'm wrong. You would agree that there's nothing wrong with diversity. You're just pointing out there's also nothing wrong with lack of diversity. In other
well,
words,
I'm gonna go. I'm
more
gonna
of a
go a little bit.
neutral position, if I understand correctly, or no?
Well, I'm gonna go a little bit further than that, and I'm gonna say that I've had, and this is funny because people have made these kinds of statements very cliche at this point. So when you say what I'm about to say, most people can say this, and that's true. But it's still relevant for what we're talking about, and it's still as fresh and powerful for what we're talking about when you're trying to make a point. So that is, throughout, my childhood, my life, I mean, I've had a very diverse group of friends. I've had close Asian friends, close Hispanic friends, close African American friends, Black friends. I mean,
European
I've
friends?
been, excuse me?
European friends?
European friends. Yeah, I mean, Russian. I even had a Russian friend at one point. Scary. Now that I think about what they were probably trying to do and infiltrate.
Hey Dana,
But
what would you be?
Oh, I'm your Latina friend.
yeah, so
Hola.
you're my little chica.
Yes.
Very good, Ron.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't really. I mean, I'm going to go further, Jeff, and say that not only do I accept it, but I've also personally embraced it, and I've really had a good time in the sense that I've enjoyed those differences, and I think that having those differences in culture is fun, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What I do think is important is to you know, consider being able to keep those cultures pure in the sense that, traditions are important. And, Asian cultures, and there's a wide range of Asian cultures, and there's a wide range of European cultures, right? I mean, there's all these different um, little segregations, if you will, that seem to exist. Well, they do exist, and for me, that's okay. For me, what I'm saying is, for me, I enjoy being able to go into different cultures and enjoy that experience.
You sound like a
And I would,
liberal, because I've
what?
heard liberals say it's not a melting pot where everybody sort of becomes everyone else. It's more like a tossed salad
Yeah, yeah.
where you get a
Well,
little crunch of crouton, a little bite of bacon, a little romaine lettuce here, and a little touch of dressing there.
yeah, I guess. I don't know. I mean, Dana,
Hola.
um, you're a Berkeley gal, right?
Yes. And
Yeah.
and it is interesting how I wonder how much enforced diversity touched my experience at Berkeley.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Jeff knows. Does Berkeley, at the time I went, they considered race as part of admissions, right?
I will look up that, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Because here's what was interesting. Back then, knowingly played up my Hispanic heritage. The fact that my grandparents were immigrants, like it was in my paper, my essay paper. And
Personal statement, as I think with others
yes,
do.
the personal statement, and I thought that would be helpful.
Wow.
And because I met Jeff, as we already mentioned, at community college, and I went for 3 years to community college because I didn't really understand transferring, like how many units you needed to transfer. So anyway, I was admitted as a transfer student to Berkeley. And at the time, I didn't really understand how selective of a school it was, but they accepted me. And my grades were very good, but I wasn't an outstanding, community college scholar or anything. I didn't have some type of concentrated area of expertise or passion or something, outside of the transfer units. And maybe they just don't have as many people to weed out. And maybe that's why I got in. But when I was admitted, I chose to live in the dorms. And so I was a 21-year-old college student rooming with mostly freshmen at the dorms that I was in. And it was surprising to me because I roomed with two Asian Americans. One was Vietnamese and the other had a Chinese background. And the girl with the Chinese background, from what I remember, she had been rejected on her first attempt, and she was there after she appealed, and she was on a probation, kind of like a probation, some type of probationary admission, where if she did well, she could continue on. But she had been actually the valedictorian of her class. She had super grades, super SAT scores. She was, I think, the yearbook editor or newspaper editor, like a very involved student. And I was a little stunned, like, wow, they rejected you? That's strange. And now, and I'm realizing, thinking about my situation where I had very good grades, but nothing really notable. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Now we're here in 2018, and I'm hearing about the court cases that Asian Americans are filing over at, is it Yale or Harvard, where they are protesting and filing suit because they feel like Harvard or whatever school it is, knowingly downgrades Asian Americans' applications so that they won't be overrepresented as at the school. Because if they went based on grades and test scores, that the Asians would dominate, I guess.
Yeah.
So they feel like they're unfairly targeted. And it made me think back about that experience, thinking, oh, I wonder if, some of that was at play. Why was this very qualified girl rejected from Berkeley? And I don't think I was as scholarly and qualified. I mean, but there might have been other things. We were in different majors, perhaps. Maybe I was in a less competitive major, but I find that interesting. And thinking about how I knowingly, I had that in my mind that, oh, my Mexican background is helpful because I played on this idea of, my minority group is considered oppressed. Even though my personal life was not oppressed at all. I had a very nice upbringing. So that's interesting. That's one area that this focus on diversity might have helped me. And I had a question for you. Do you think that you're seeing this in your personal life, or is this just something that you're responding to based on the media buzz about diversity?
Do you mean have I experienced anything as a white male that would cause me to want to talk about this in real life?
Like in your workplace, have you heard someone like in management say, well, we need more diverse a more diverse management team, implying they need more people of different skin colors or genders. Or have you seen that?
No, no. The thing that I have heard over and over again, and this is the most common statement that I've heard with regard to this topic, and that is, people will say that they enjoy a certain area, meaning like a city, or a state, or a particular area around the world. But over and over again, I've heard people say, I like, that particular area because there's diversity, meaning that, they seem to find, having different cultures mixed together, they seem to find enjoyment in that, and they seem to enjoy that. So I've heard that over and over again. With regard to, people saying, in the workplace that we need more, whatever it is, more Asians to work with us and things like that. No, I have not seen that personally. Although I've had many conversations with people that have suggested that individuals have been given certain spots based on their pigment in their skin. I'm just joking, Jeff.
I lost you at that last joke because I was reading some data. I was
Yeah.
actually listening to everything up to that, and I saw this very colorful graphic that was kind of confusing for me. So I was
Okay.
trying to understand it, and I didn't hear your joke. Can you tell your joke for me so I can?
Well, no. I'm not going to tell a joke because I'm going to just say it how I want to say it. I have had many conversations with people over the years, and they've suggested that certain individuals have obtained positions or spots based on their race.
Mhm.
So, in other words,
It'd be interesting to do some real good data on what is going on, because I wonder how much of this is us kind of feeling like this, because the whole hiring
hey,
process.
can I stop you 1 second?
No, I'm in the middle of
Remember
saying
that
something.
microphone noise that we heard last time?
Yeah, I just touched my microphone. I'm sorry, Ron.
Oh, I hear it a lot. I hear it
Am
like,
I in trouble?
no, I'm just saying,
I'm just kidding. You don't hear it right now, though, do you?
no.
Okay. I'm gonna go completely off topic, but back on topic. Dana asked a question about Berkeley, and so maybe we're a little bit out of the loop, to be honest. Does everyone know what happened in 1998?
No,
No. I
There was a
mean, maybe.
There was a proposition on the ballot,
no.
Proposition 209,
So
which in
maybe.
1996 disallowed state public institutions from discriminating on the basis of race, sex, or ethnicity.
Okay.
So Dana, you might have got in based on your own abilities.
Wait, but isn't that different? That's different. That's saying you can't discriminate, but that's different than what?
Well, this is Berkeley. I believe it's the Cal States and the
Yeah. Yes, but that's different from what I've heard in these, when I heard some news coverage about the lawsuit, the current lawsuit, where schools won't say they're discriminating, but they'll say that race is considered a factor.
But which schools are those? you see in Cal State.
Okay, so then with this law, then they couldn't even, could they not look at race on my admission paper? Because I think I checked a box, but also I did write a whole essay. So that's
let me,
even, you're going to read my essay, and I played up the Mexican American illiterate grandmother heritage.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you
when you
can't,
say played it up, that was your real life story. So
it was, but I
wanna
knew it was helpful.
balance out your downplaying your real life story and the reality that your story is pretty neat. And furthermore, you are the exception to the rule of the family, if you ask me. And so if you look at the pure statistics of your family alone, not everyone is Dana.
Well, that's
Goes without saying. I mean, with the 8 children too, getting a college degree from a fancy pants school and then never working after 2 years.
There's
well,
work.
no. Dana, let me say something. What you just heard him say is that he's very proud of his wife. And he really enjoys your story, and he's proud of who you are, and he takes pleasure in who you are. That's what he just said.
Thank you for
that
translation. I think we need that every day, that translation.
Yeah. That's exactly what he just said.
Yeah.
Can
So
I
what
ask
you're,
a question?
oh, sure.
No, go. I'm sorry.
Well, so what you're saying is possibly Berkeley could not consider race as a factor in their admissions process, and what I observed or thought about might have just been
all in
in
your
my head.
Okay, I'm just now reading what I'm reading, but the California State University system and the University of California system, for which Berkeley is part of, is under Proposition 209, which barred schools from using those things. They even have a lot of graphics, which is what I was referring to, Ron, when I said I got a little bit distracted, showing the drop in the rates of people who were applying. So it's really pretty interesting.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, being accepted.
Yeah.
One of the things
So
I found really interesting, and I don't mean to steal the
thunder.
thunder, but they have a graph that shows the admission rate versus the graduation rate. And while the admission rate for the Hispanics, African Americans went down after the thing passed, the graduation rates continued to rise with time, which I found kind of interesting. There is perhaps there's some merit to the argument that by adjusting these things, you may be letting somebody in who is not as qualified as somebody else, and they may not do as well in the end because
Yes.
college is hard. And those percentages are kind of interesting in that while the number of students that were Hispanic and African American decreased in the enrollment numbers, the number of students graduating continued to be about the same. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was wondering about when Ron brought up the topic, and I tried to think about, is there a big disconnect between all this push for diversity I hear about in the media versus real life? And I thought, that, I have seen that, like a soft push, at least for diversity of skin color. And I thought it was interesting being in 2 different settings, where in one setting there was a push, even though it wasn't really heavy-handed, but there was a desire for diversity, and in another setting where there was not even a thought about diversity. Could I share that one? Oh, great DJ Ron.
Yeah, no, please tell me. And
Yes.
give great details as well.
I don't know if I can do that. There's so much pressure. But well, so Jeff and I had visited or attended a church for about 5 years, and their one of their, I guess, their mission statement, it says something, and part of the mission statement is to be a multi-ethnic church community. Maybe they had the word diverse in there. I don't know, but there was, stated goal or mission is to be multi-ethnic, and they talked about race a little bit. But I thought, I didn't really realize that was part of the mission statement after a while, and then I thought, oh, maybe I'm a bonus, right? Because because Jeff and I have an interracial relationship. Ooh. But so I just kind of thought, well, that's interesting. And I don't know, to me, I guess I'm not, maybe you could describe it as ambivalent, or I'm just not really into pursuing that. But just like you, Ron, I have no problem with knowing, people from a wide variety of backgrounds.
Correction.
I'm not.
Correction.
What?
Not just no problem. Ron said he actually enjoys and has fun with the variety of people's experiences and cultures.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
He's listening to you.
Oh, he is listening. That's how you know.
Yes.
That's how you know how good and elusive the guy is.
Ouch. Okay. Anyway, so I was in that setting and thinking about how this was a goal. And maybe, Jeff is really good at contradicting my perception of things. So perhaps his perception or his facts are different than my feelings. But as I was sitting there and thinking, okay, like, I guess this multi-ethnic push, it's for, they want a variety of skin colors, right? That's basically what people mean. So, and I looked around, I thought, well, it's a majority white, and there's some Asians, and not a lot of African American representation. I think one Latino or two Latino families. But anyway, I thought, well, it's mostly white. And then I also thought about another setting that I was in at the same time, which was my homeschool. It's called a co-op, or just basically a gathering once a week where the children take classes together. So lots of homeschooling moms mostly, and it's a Christian community and fairly conservative. And I actually thought about that community in contrast, and I thought, that is so interesting. Like, I'm part of this other group of people where there are, a good number of light-skinned people, white people, but there were also Hispanics, Asians, African Americans, and I thought that other setting actually had more people of color in proportion. I think maybe Jeff's been there before, so he might totally disagree with me. But I thought, okay, well, there's, a range of skin tones and different languages being spoken. Like one of my friends, she speaks Mandarin, Spanish, and English to her children, like all the time. Like one phrase after another is in a different language. And so, and then another friend who she does a Chinese New Year thing every year for the children, and just all sorts of diversity is happening there. But I thought, I cannot think of one meeting or group gathering where we ever even brought up the idea of being diverse, or how great it was that so many different ethnicities were represented. And I thought it was interesting because we had as a main idea this goal of promoting Christian homeschool education for our children. And we're trying to pursue that idea together. And in pursuit of that idea, a range of people with different backgrounds came together. And there's not even, from what I could see, any tension in how we relate to each other based on race. Like, we were united in something greater than race. And naturally, the races, different races came out and people got along and appreciated and shared, their ethnic backgrounds, but we never even discussed it. And I actually thought, for me, I much prefer that more, that type of setting where race isn't even a big deal. It would be a big deal if someone was racist, but since we're not there, it just, we were bound together more based on ideas and things we shared. And naturally that resulted in peaceful race relations. So I just thought that was different. I felt like the other, to me, having that, okay, let's be multi-ethnic, it kind of feels like awkward and artificial, I guess. But that might just be me.
No, what a powerful story. Seriously. That is, I mean, that's exactly reality. That's what you see when you see organic kind of, if you want to call it that, right? Organic kind of diversity where people gather around ideas and gather around um, celebrations of different types, right? So in other words, you might have like a very diverse group of people that like to celebrate, like you said, Dana, maybe an Asian holiday. Now, I know the person in your group, it's not like your group as a whole did that. I know that you mentioned it was one individual that celebrated that. But what my point is, though, outside of your little group, beyond her, there are a lot of people that probably celebrate that and enjoy that. And so they're naturally, a lot of times you'll see naturally just diversity happen. And that's really my point. I mean, in your story perfectly illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't see this huge problem with diversity at all. I don't see where there is this need to kind of enforce it, if you will, like affirmative action, those kinds of um, laws or movements or things, these boundaries that we set up. Diversity kind of will naturally happen, but the other side of that, though, there are people that will segregate naturally, and there will people that will gather um, with Asians because that's what they feel comfortable with. And they'll gather with African Americans, that culture, because that's what they feel comfortable with. And there are opportunities for people, you and I, and them as well, to, if they want to, kind of become part of that culture, integrate into that culture, right? Learn how to um, speak the language, learn how to enjoy the the everyday kind of stuff. You see those things happen all the time um, in a number of different cultures, and there's I don't see why we need to continue to push it. Is I guess my point. And that's why I said I want to talk about the push for diversity because just observing, what is before your eyes, it should tell you. And I know this differs depending on where you are in the world, because I know a lot of places there isn't diversity. And what I'm saying is, that's okay too. That's okay too if there's not diversity. in a particular culture. And I'll give you, for instance.
Oh, me.
Yes,
I
yes, Jeff.
visited the school that Dana is referring to as a father visiting his children. Are you talking about which one are you talking about? The co-op or the
Yeah, the one that we
okay,
were part of for a long
co-op.
time.
All right, so I visited on one of my days. I can't remember what the purpose was, but anyhow, I went to go visit the class and see what they were doing. And I'm a teacher, and so I'm working in classrooms all day. And I was actually struck by the amount of diversity in the classroom. I looked at a circle of students and I saw different color hair, different color skin, just lots of differences. And the reason I was struck by that is because the school I teach at, I'm looking at the numbers right now. It's 92% Hispanic, 2.5 plus 2 is 2.5% Asian, African American, about 3%, European, about 1.5%. So we're looking at over 90% of my students are Hispanic. And so when I'm looking at my classroom, I see a lot of similar hair colors, similar skin tones, and similar culture. And I'm so used to that that I was actually kind of struck by the amount of diversity of those classes. But here it comes back to what you were about to say, Ron, is I don't look at my class and say, oh, what a shame. We need more Europeans and African Americans in this room. I don't have that sort of mindset. I don't I obviously, as I said earlier, and you said, and Dana saying, I'm not opposed to diversity. I enjoy diversity. I think there are actual, there's benefits to different groups of people with different cultures and things. But as a little side note, my students are actually pretty diverse if you don't pay attention to their skin color and their title, Hispanic. If Many of them have quite different lives at home. Um, and for those of them that are from Central and South America, that's a big continent with lots of different subcultures within that entire area. And so it's kind of interesting too. Some people look at the skin color and they think, oh, there's no diversity in the room, and it's kind of absurd. So someone would say we need to adjust the quotas here because there's something wrong with my room. And I'm thinking to myself, when I walk into that classroom that my wife is describing, there's all that diversity. That's neat. It's very different from my classroom. And I look in my room and there may not be diversity in skin tones. That's okay. But there's also tons of diversity in personality, just as individuals and cultures, just within those same skin colors. And so I don't know. I do wonder too, what's the issue? So long as people are accepting that we should not be against diversity, like that we shouldn't be racist, that we shouldn't be prejudging and all these other different things, all the negative parts. If you get rid of all those, and you sorry, I hit my little mic there, and you take that biblical idea that there's neither Jew nor Greek nor slave nor free nor male nor female. You kind of like look at everybody as individuals. Seems all right.
No, that's again, I mean, a perfect picture of what I'm talking about. And you gave the contrast of there not being a whole lot of diversity within, skin color, right, within a particular classroom. But spread that out into other environments, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. And they're in your classroom, although the heritage might be the same, right? The race may overall represent one particular group of people. Within that group of people, there's a diverse setting of personalities and talents and gifts and desires and likes, and probably even things that they enjoy, even food, kind of basic everyday things, right? They'll may gravitate towards certain things. And that is, for me, when I think about the problem of the lack of diversity. I don't personally see it. And that's all my point. And both of you gave very good examples and illustrations and pictures of how it really, at the end of the day, is not really a problem as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand. I don't understand the argument for it, and I'm open to hear it if you are able to articulate it. But me personally, I don't. I can't make that argument with any kind of sincerity. Um,
Yeah, well, you
Dana.
understand the argument though. Like I think, right? I think that the reason why, say for example, when I listen to NPR and they talk about the film industry, and I've heard several little segments where somebody proclaims how they need more people of color as directors and they need more women directors and people of color being represented in the writing. Like they specifically want people with different skin colors other than white and different genders other than male to be playing these powerful, these leading positions in the industry. And they will say that it's because they've been underrepresented through, you know, some type of oppression, and they haven't been able to rise to a place of influence, and that they bring something unique to the table. They bring their stories to the table. So that's why we need them. So that's their argument, like oppressed groups, underrepresented. And so we need to push to force them to rise to whatever positions in whatever field is being discussed to correct for the past and to bring their voice up. And, you know, on one hand, okay, but on another hand, to me, I feel like it's very superficial. It very superficially labels somebody, and it doesn't it doesn't bring into mind other forms of culture or other groupings that people find themselves in. So for example, going back to my little co-op group, we had a lot of different skin colors represented and ethnic backgrounds, but in one way that we weren't very diverse is this idea of like a religious culture, and those children had a lot in common with each other because of the, I guess possibly heavily religious families that they came from. And some of the examples were, I mean, the show fell out of favor for good reason, but they would bring up in class like the Duggar wedding and how they didn't kiss or something like that. And it wasn't mocked. It was talked about in a positive way. And there was, other open discussions where the mothers would share beliefs about not letting their children read like Harry Potter and things like that. Where if you took a brown kid from that group and put him in Jeff's school, they would stand out in a not so good way in that school setting because of their, I don't know what you call it, just religious group that they're in. Or
Lack of
it's a different kind of, what?
lack of ideological diversity.
Yes.
In other words,
yes.
you can have within that group, while the skin colors, which you're almost saying it's almost superficial, although there are lots of real differences between cultures. While the skin colors may be different, there was a lot of unity in culture. That is the Christian culture. So you have this whole group of different colored skinned people with similarities in idea. Whereas, like you just said, you drop one of those children into my classroom, there might be a significant culture clash in a
Yes.
certain sense because they're going to be completely, not completely, but in a lot of ways, they're going to be disconnected from the culture of the group in my classes, which leads to something you've talked to me about, Dana, and Ron. You might find this interesting. My wife is, or my partner has pointed out the lack of ideological diversity within groups as something to consider also. For example, let's say NPR wanted to be diverse. Why don't they have half conservative, half liberal, or let's say a mix of ideological diversities? Imagine if you took in the idea of religion, you should have, you know, a little bit of Christian, a little bit of Muslim, a little
A
bit of
Mormon,
atheism, a
a
little bit of
Mormon on the
Latter-day
Christian.
Saints, Chauvinists, Buddhists, Hindus, and so you have to have ideological diversity. That would get really interesting, because not only are you focusing on genetics, their skin colors and things like this, but having actually different ideas in the room. Imagine that.
Well, let's face it, the truth of the matter is, when it comes to diversity, all people really want to see is a diverse array of skin colors. They don't really want to have a diverse array of ideas in different cultures, because the reality is sometimes, not sometimes, at certain points, you will have a clash, you will have a conflict. There will be paradigms that either need to be, shifted, and they need to, change perspective, or you're going to stand by a particular conviction or your cultural ideas, whatever you're going to do. The reality is, if you're going to hold diverse, even religious views, and you're going to put all those people together at some point. Well, here's an example, Jeff. This is just real life. So, let's just take our experience. Dana, you too. You were here the entire time as well. So you've witnessed it yourself, and this isn't made up. This isn't a theory. This is real life. This is an actual experience, and that is, you can take a group of people that, like us, have gathered together in a church setting, and in many ways, we have all these similarities, and sometimes, in large numbers, in skin colors, and there's a lot of representation, because the churches that we went to, at least early on when I met you, were churches that I feel really grabbed from the culture, and I'm going to say made it their own, because, and I don't down them. I think they did a lot of really cool things, and they brought a lot of people together that probably normally wouldn't, gather. And they created a lot of friendships, and they created a community that really did a lot of neat things. So there's really some good, powerful experiences through what happened in those churches. But they were, in that Southern California area, there were a couple of churches that really were popular, more than just a couple, a lot of them. And you and I, that's how we ended up kind of meeting through that community. But here's the reality, and here's the truth of the matter when it comes to diversity in ideas and bringing those things together, and that is, once you start going against or bringing up things that don't represent the larger community, if you start questioning those things, ultimately you're going to face some friction. You just do. And we've all seen that. Jeff, last time Dana talked about your experiment, with, bringing up certain things, and I've done that same thing, interesting enough, for same period of time in a different setting. And you did that with a very specific purpose in mind, and it probably taught you, just like it taught me, quite a bit about those interactions, and bringing that up. And that is, sometimes, having these conversations a little bit difficult with people. So you might have, with this topic of diversity, there is, you know, in some sense, if you started talking about, well, it's okay that there's not diversity. If you said that, you said, in this particular community, it's okay that there's not diversity. You may be met with some friction. You might have some people that, disagree with that. And but I feel like you may encounter that in real life. That's true, but the culture really is in disagreement with that. There's Dana, you went to a school that's huge on pushing diversity. I mean, that's a major thing in what they do and how they're represented out to, whoever their targeted audience is. One of their big things is diversity. And yet though, but if you're a conservative on those things, I've watched many videos um, over the years, and people that have, gone on to those kinds of campuses. And, what you will find is that, if somebody's, kind of leans conservative, not kind of, but if somebody leans conservative, they're not really having the same experience that somebody that's kind of a more progressive liberal mindset. And I've seen that a lot. Now that I know, you can tell me, no, that's not really true. If you're a conservative on that campus, on Berkeley's campus, yeah, you're more than welcome, and they embrace you, and they are welcoming to those ideas. And there's plenty of representation on the campus for conservative ideas. Um, could be wrong, but you tell me, is that accurate?
Well, one story just popped into my little brain. I had been an art major at first, so I had familiarity with how the art classes typically went, at least for one semester. Where basically, when you shared your piece, it wasn't critical. I mean, I can't think of hardly any time where somebody's piece, they would show whatever they made. If it was a big ball of glue hanging from the wall with some color splashed on it, it would be talked about and like affirmed or explored in a very positive way. The artist would get to talk about what they intended and blah, blah, blah. Very positive, very, very welcoming. And I had a few different art classes where this happened. And then I also had taken I think a couple of classes after I changed my major as well, where art and art pieces were um, brought out and dialogued about. So um, that was my impression. It wasn't a highly critical thing. And, there's a lot of interpretations and it was very open. But I had met somebody who, and back then I don't think I even knew of the term transgender, but she had been a former transgender. So, and I had no idea. She looked very much like a girl. I had no clue that that was her background. But she had a past where, in her teenage years, she completely looked like a boy, lived like a boy, had girlfriends who considered her a boy, even though they knew she was a girl. It was very strange. Anyway, and
Hold
she
on,
had
hold
a
on, hold on.
oh, whoa,
Ron,
hello.
did you hear what she just said? Because I always found this to be a very interesting element of the story. So say that one more time. She was a
She was,
boy.
I
She was
guess, a transgender. That's what we'd say now,
yeah,
right? But she had
yeah,
just believed she was a girl. She was a boy in a girl's
yeah.
body.
But she was a boy to the external world. Everyone would she was acting out. She was transgender. She was a boy, and she would actually you said she would She had relationships with girls.
Yeah, and the girls wouldn't say that they
Maybe
were lesbian. The girls would
say that
say,
they were
no, she's a boy.
boy.
But they knew she was a girl.
Yeah.
Maybe they were ahead of their time. I don't know. But she had, in her mind now, later, she just told me she just thought it was that she had a really big deception upon her that was like a spiritual type thing, and that it even influenced others. Girls who previous to their relationship with her did not consider themselves lesbian would date her and be in a relationship knowing the actual biology, but still would not think that they were lesbian. Very interesting. But she had a dramatic change, and then from that point on, lived as a girl. And kind of, I just think, wow, I'm really grateful back then that hormones and surgery wasn't available back, because she would have probably pursued that, and then she would have made, some pretty serious changes to her body. But anyway,
Oh,
so
I
at
like this.
Berkeley, though, at Berkeley, she had made this video piece, and then she showed it to me. It was this short video, and it had photos of her life and like her life story, and it wasn't really heavy-handed, as in like, being, I don't even think it was called trans back then, but just not living according to your birth biology is wrong. It wasn't like that, but it was her life story basically, and how happy she was now and how free she feels now and all this stuff. When she showed that video, from what she told me, when she showed that video in a personal autobiography kind of art piece class, where that's what they were supposed to do,
Yeah.
she said it was so heavily condemned and offensive. Very, like, the one time people just thrashed an art piece, it was because of it was her art piece. And it was just, she was even surprised. She was at the level of anger that piece created. Because even though it was very positive and whatever, it did express some type of judgment on this idea of living out, living the opposite gender of how you were born. Very interesting. So sure, you could, maybe that's not politically conservative, right? But you could file that as that was an example of stories you shouldn't tell at a campus where so much is embraced and accepted and,
Yeah.
validated.
Yeah. No, that's I don't know, again, it's one of those things that illustrates the reality of even my own experiences, not with that same particular subject, but I mean, we've all seen whether, I mean, take eschatology, the study of the end times, from a biblical perspective, right? I mean, take that and throw that kind of stuff out there, and you are going to be you're going to experience those same kind of things. um I'm not really sure what to make of that. Your story about this friend that had this life-changing experience, and so much so that she shared her story and then was met with that kind of resistance. I've seen those kind of things happen a lot. And I guess what, in your opinion, Dana, right? I mean, you take that story, and that was just her story. It wasn't like everybody needed to accept that reality, and say that anybody in that lifestyle was wrong or anything like that. She was just sharing what happened to her, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's just her own story. What I mean, in your opinion, and from what you've observed, and from the many things that you've come across, even in your own life, and having these discussions, what do you think is at the foundation of that resistance towards even having a discussion?
Well, I I personally experience doubtful thoughts about the validity of my Christian belief. I think I know all the arguments against being a Christian and the the basic questions, all that. And I have times where I really do explore those and wonder and, you know, um, don't feel super sure, even though I've been trying to live my life as much as I can in accord with scripture, with a conservative reading of the scripture. But there's say with this story and the heavy anger that comes, I do tend to believe it's like spiritual, like people reject God and his teachings on life, because otherwise it shouldn't make sense for a culture
Right.
where anything goes, like anything that your truth, your belief. But when it comes to someone expressing, you know with the Christian viewpoint, it's met with such heavy anger.
Yeah.
And I know other religions too, Islam gets a lot of pushback as well. But
Well,
anyway, when I see things
no,
like that, I think, I think people just, it does seem like a point in favor of biblical God. People reject
no,
his ways. Like it looks like it. I'm willing to,
no.
again, I'm just prefacing all that with saying I do have times of doubt myself, but gosh, yeah, the way the teeth come out with some of these things, it's truly amazing.
No, it absolutely is. And for me it's one of those things that um well, you can pretend um be ignorant of it, but I think if you're an honest observer, and especially if you've taken on some of those positions yourself, meaning you've actually, had convictions that would lead you to, express opinions that are, we'll call them conservative. There's a lot of different names for them, but we'll call it conservative. But that's met with this, well, it's conservative, it's more of a religious kind of thing. And the hostility that you're met sometimes is, I guess, more than interesting, and I don't think can be denied from an honest observer. And you know, I I think that means something. For me personally, I think that gives some kind of validity to um, certain beliefs. And I think for a lot of people, it does. I think for a lot of people just kind of sense, have that ability to say, well, I think, that particular idea seems right to me for whatever reason. And no, I don't have every um, word to describe it. I don't have the way to perfectly articulate why I believe what I believe, but for whatever reason, we'll just say resonates. That resonates with me. That idea kind of like strikes a chord with me. It's like a tuning fork. Um, you hear it and you hear the chime and you go, boom, that makes sense to me. And there's a sort of that inner kind of conviction, right? That you observe.
Yep. What do you think, El Jefe?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm triggered.
bearded,
I'm triggered.
bearded God. What are you doing?
What'd you call me? Oh, I'm just listening. I've always been, as an aside, I've always been impressed by that story, and there's more details to that story of Dana's friend. But in the context of 2018, as Dana was saying it back, 15, 20 years ago, it was a little bit different time. So, in the context of 2018, where you're hearing about legislation going through that says that someone can't, do conversion therapy, and you can't sell a book that says that someone can change, and it's really weird because you have that story where you had someone who did change, and I know of people who do change, and so I know this is off topic compared to what you guys are talking about, but I can't help but remark that there is a lot more diversity of experience and opinion, perhaps, than you kind of get the sense of from everyday media.
Yeah. Oh no, I think she's going to be on NPR real soon, any day. With all the interest on trans stories, they're going to pursue her or someone
Oh,
like her.
no, absolutely. No, absolutely. They're gonna go after that story like crazy because it's so powerful and it can change and help people, and people find a lot of encouragement through it.
Yeah. Or just
And
her voice isn't heard, right? Whoever
yeah,
hears a voice like that, they'll make a movie out of it real soon.
yeah, no, because she's completely underrepresented. Um, no, I don't know. It's a good point. That's for me personally, um, I don't know how you can get around it. And here's the thing. Going back to kind of originally what we started talking about, this whole idea of push.
Jeff is triggered.
Yeah, this whole idea though, this whole idea, like this push for diversity seems to go like because nobody's against diversity.
Well, there are
I
people wrong. There are.
not not
Hold on,
not
hold on. There are
not really,
white
John.
supremacists who want to have their own little so-called white nation, and there are you. What do you mean? There are groups of people. I,
So
are,
is it just
and
whites?
I even have family members who have openly stated that you cannot get into a relationship with somebody of a different race than your own. So there are people who are both against diversity within society and people who are against diversity within a relationship. And so I have to stop you there and say there certainly are those people that exist. I know some personally and I see them on YouTube.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying that they
Triggered.
don't. Yeah. I'm not saying that they don't exist. What I'm saying is that if you want to talk about a group that's underrepresented, um, that group is underrepresented, and and here's what I say, just kind of naturally, because you you're not going to go out into this world. You're not going to hear somebody say those kind of things, including your family members. I've heard stuff like that too, plenty of times. But I've heard it in a lot. And here's the thing, the context behind, somebody saying certain things is very, very important because I've heard a lot of what would be considered racial jokes. But those jokes have come from a good heart, meaning that they're intended to be funny. They're not intended to be hurtful. They're intended to point out certain things that are observable, and if they weren't, it wouldn't be funny. If people didn't notice those things, it would not be funny. And the heart behind those jokes a lot of time is funny. And I've heard jokes about interracial marriage, and those are just funny. It's just a lot of times I've heard, and I've
I'm
heard
triggered.
people.
I'm
I
triggered. I'm
know,
sorry.
I know.
Triggered.
I know, but I've heard people say what.
Let's not give any place for racist jokes, Ron, please.
Well, I've
Well,
got
I know the racist jokes are coming from a good heart, according to
no,
you.
well, so here's what's interesting here, yeah, I,
I just cannot stand aside and let you say those kinds of things.
well,
I might allow for an ignorant heart or
no,
someone
no,
who's
no.
but a good heart talking racist jokes. Why don't we just condemn
Okay,
racism and racist jokes and
okay. So what do you do? What do you,
so
Jeff? What do you do, Jeff? What do you do with Richard Pryor? Is
I
he
don't
is he some is he some racist?
I think any racist joke is not good given the true negative things that come with racism. Two things. One, it seems to be all a bunch of made up cultural mumbo jumbo. That's the first thing. And the second thing is people really act on this made up cultural mumbo jumbo and make real decisions that are both hurtful and scary.
so
So I don't
yeah.
think it is something that you should ever joke about. I think it's something that you should uh, uh, do what I'm doing right now and just like, no, that's not acceptable. I know
So, okay,
you were going to say
I keep
something
wanting
else,
to
but
say so. So,
so
what do you do when it's non-racist making the jokes? So, like way back in high school, that was a different time. I would call my friend a honky, and she would call me a beaner, and we would just laugh our heads off. I don't do that anymore. But even
Thank
looking
you.
back at that, like that type of joke,
Can
I
we do
just
that now? Can we do that
no,
now?
no. I just don't think that that's the harmful. I mean, it's immature and like crude, but like I think we made that joke because we weren't racist, because we thought it'd be stupid for me to mock her because she's white.
Thank you.
And then even now though, so I don't do that anymore. Even though it might make me laugh, we
Why
don't do
not?
that. But
Why not?
because I'm mature. But so now though, here's where, and then again, this is for a non-racist person. I consider myself non-racist. Um, my friend, she was on her way to my baby shower, and um, they were running late or something like that, and her husband wondered if they should eat before, and she's like, what are you talking about? They're Mexican, they're going to have tons of food. And she's right. Like that's what we do. We have, like, my mom makes enough food to feed like 4 times as many people as will come to the house. And so that, but you could say, am I supposed to look at her and say, that was a racist joke against my Mexican mother or family, and I do not find it funny.
No, no,
Um,
thank you,
or the
Oh
same
my
thing where
God.
my mom makes jokes about the white people parties and how those white people birthday parties, they only last 2 hours, and ours go on and whatever. And it's funny, kind of, because it's kind of true. I never had experienced short parties until I started going to non-family parties. I didn't realize you were supposed to show up pretty
on
much close to
time
right on
and leave
time
on time.
and you leave on time. It was going to your family's functions that were so different from me. They really mean they want us to be there at 2. And it's not going to just go on and people bringing food at random times. The aunt who's supposed to bring the rice brings it 3 hours after the party started. And so those are like stereotypical ethnic jokes, but you make them and laugh at them because you wouldn't say, oh, they're 100% true all the time, but they're true enough. And can that type of joke be told with a good heart? I don't know what type of jokes Ron is talking about.
Well,
Some of
well,
the maybe his jokes might be different, but mine are more like, I still laugh at those jokes.
yeah.
And I think it'd be a sad gray world for that to go away. I guess you can say that that's offensive, but I don't know. I don't know if that's really the problem here when we
Well,
talk about these race issues.
no, that's those number one. Those are the jokes that I'm talking about. that are funny, because that's true. And here's some of the things that I find hilarious is Jeff's illustration earlier of his classroom and the diversity of um, ideas within the classroom, even though you have maybe the same skin colors, right? But within that, there are and I would say this, you mentioned the kind of the stereotypical holiday situation where you show up on time, right? You're there for a certain period of time and then you leave. Um, I know that to be true about a lot of people as well. But I didn't personally grow up that way. We didn't do those kind of things. We did a lot of things from, more of, I felt like we did a lot of diverse kind of things. We ate a lot of Hispanic food growing up. We tamales during Christmas time. We always enjoyed when we got together, having Mexican food. We didn't have these particular traditions, of a Caucasian culture. We embraced a lot of different things. Um, and so that, and I don't think, Dana, to your point, I don't think I don't think those jokes are bad. I think those are funny. If your friend's calling you a beaner,
But that was like
well,
20 years ago.
well, I'll give you for instance, like this was not too long ago. My aunt was telling me a story. Both of my uncles are Mexican, and they're married to very Caucasian, blonde, blue-eyed women, and those are my dad's sisters. And so both my uncles, and I've grown up with them my entire life. They're Hispanic, and we've enjoyed a lot of their culture. And throughout the years, there has been so many funny jokes about it. And my grandpa, who would have grown up in that period of time where, racism was kind of like, and the N word was a derogatory kind of thing. If you were saying it, you were saying it in a way where you're putting somebody down. But on the other side of that, there was, and again, I'll take my two uncles that are Hispanic, and my grandpa would make jokes that were hilarious to everybody. He'd call one of my uncles Taco, and and the other one Burrito, and it was hilarious because because you knew what he was, you know what he was doing. I mean, he was obviously, he was in a very funny way making that stereotypical kind of like white joke. He's like, where's Taco, where is he coming over tonight, that kind of thing. But it wasn't, nobody got crazy, and nobody thought, oh my gosh, like this is just tragic, he's racist, the world is freaking ending, he's hateful, I can't talk to him anymore. It was none of that. I mean, it was funny. It was hilarious. And I feel like, here's the thing, and I feel like, and this is true. This is true. If you defend those kind of things, people have stopped talking to me over that stuff. That's real. That's not even a joke. I've literally had people on Facebook defriend me over saying that that stuff's not racist and that stuff's not wrong and that it just people.
Well, you know, perhaps you would have to acknowledge that those types of, let's say it's really like a sarcastic joke, and you might need to be like surgeon precise with sarcastic jokes. So I'll bring up one, you know, example. Jeff, I gained some weight with this last pregnancy, and Jeff has made some precise fat
It's
jokes
getting
with
really
me.
late.
It's getting, and
Getting
we
really.
we've both laughed and laughed. I go in the
That's
closet
hilarious.
and cry afterwards, but we've laughed. They're funny. And I did get kind of fat. So like, but then maybe if you were to defend on Facebook, hey, you should be able to make a fat joke about your wife if she gains too much weight. Like, that's not going to go well. Maybe it's like that, like where maybe some jokes you make with good friends or good family might not necessarily play the same way with other people, right? Or as a broad rule. What do
Well,
you think, Jeff? Besides the fact that it's getting late.
I don't think you should make the jokes.
So you shouldn't make the fat joke either?
I think that there's
there he goes.
there's a difficult.
Is that different? Is that different, Jeff?
What?
Nothing. Okay. Do you mean just like sarcastic jokes that involve race or size or anything?
I like this when I talk. Um,
I like that.
I don't think you should make the jokes.
Why?
So while I think it's not cut and dry on what I'm talking about, because I don't think culture is the same as race. So I'm talking about racist jokes. I think when you start talking culture, if you know somebody and you know their culture, then you're actually making a joke about something that they actually are, and it's a cultural thing. And so I think that's a little bit different realm. I'm talking about racist jokes. And race is when you're attaching something to skin color, and when you're attaching it to skin color, you're talking biology, and you're saying everyone with this skin color has these certain characteristics and so forth. And that's just simply not the case. So if you're amongst family and friends and you know them and you're talking about cultural jokes, and it is true there might be certain cultural norms, that's getting more friendly and more actual real jokes, but those aren't racist jokes.
But someone would look at from the outside and say, Ron's, I imagine his white grandpa called his uncle Taco. And this
Oh, it's
is
so funny.
this is so like someone could be very offended at that, but
gave a
you
good
would say
example. Your
that's a
friends,
cultural
you-
joke.
No, I'm saying those ones shouldn't be made. So
Taco?
you and your friend calling each other beans. Ron's laughing. I get it too.
It's hilarious.
I also get that you're making fun of racism.
No, you're not.
Well, no,
Because
I
it's not
think they are.
racist. It's not racist. It's
No, they're making fun of racism. I think they're making fun of the fact. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, Dana, but you're actually making light of racism, because in a very sarcastic way, actually, you're saying racism is kind of stupid.
Oh, well, you know what? When I think about it more, when I was in high school, it was more like we were just I don't know, enjoying being crude in all sorts of ways. So we'd call each other the B word, we'd cuss at each other. We just, we're very insulting and loud and rude. It's just another way of being rude, I guess. That's probably where it was just part of the spectrum. It was fodder for being
like a
rude.
bunch of feral cats.
It was bad. I really had a bad mouth, a bad, really potty bad
So
mouth.
what I'm
Oh,
saying though, Ron, is
man.
that the world would be a better place if you found other ways to be funny. That racism is should be an untouchable area, and I believe we'd be much better off if we got rid of it entirely, because it is a
Well,
bunch of made up nonsense, and it does have negative consequences. And I know certainly as a child in a family that would make racist jokes, uh, I certainly think of my family as racist now, and I have more than the jokes to. Uh, I want to say that I have more than the jokes to say that, but it is bad.
um, okay. Well, no, not really. But I do think, though, here's the thing. Um, I do think your conviction is real and it's consistent. And therefore, I think I'm willing to hear it and listen to it. And therefore, I feel as though, abstaining from certain things, which I do, um, uh, with a very conscious effort to say, hey, I'm not going to make somebody uncomfortable by making this joke that could be perceived as racist, even though I don't believe it's in anywhere near the realm of racism personally. But I do think, I say to myself, well, I don't want to make, I wouldn't be in a room with you, Jeff, for instance, and think of some friends in the past, right? And say, hey, is Taco gonna show up tonight? I wouldn't, I wouldn't do that because I know that probably wouldn't fly with you real well. Although for me, I mean, I might be buckled over laughing, because it is so funny.
I think it was exactly like why my friend would call me Beaner. Like we would just laugh and laugh and
Yes.
laugh.
Yeah, it
But
is.
obviously, if she was saying that to someone to be mean, then that
Well,
would be
yeah,
ugly.
that's
But
different
so I think it's
story.
kind of like this idea of like, I don't know, crude
That's a,
ways that friends joke with each other or something
yes, they
that
just do.
I don't know. I mean, maybe an example, another corollary would be another friend today calling me, "Oh, you're so lazy. You probably just lay on the couch and eat bonbons all day." Maybe that's kind of like it. We'd laugh, but if she said that about another mom in a mean way, I'd think, "Oh, you're not. You're a jerk. What are you doing?" Maybe
Yeah,
it's like that.
I mean, it's the same kind of thing as like people doing it with sexual jokes all the time.
Oh, no.
Well, it's probably a good time to end right now.
Uh,
This is yet
so
another
I think
show
I
that
think that I
Jeff will
think
not put
that
on the internet.
Oh gosh, poor Jeff.
so I think you should abstain from them all. You don't need to make these jokes, and they actually can be bad. How
Well,
about they are bad? Forget can be. They are bad by their nature. As a matter of fact, if you get in, as I'm listening to you talk, if you get into why they're funny, that's another reason probably why not to tell them. It just
Well, Jeff, what's that teaching we heard in a Sunday school one day where you think about
it was
before you
very good.
speak? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And we might laugh a lot less, but we probably would do less unintended damage, I guess.
Yes. T-Rock? Hear that.
I guess I'm shocked. I'm joking. No, I'm not shocked at all. I'm ready to make some very funny jokes.
I think as a follow-up show, we should have somebody as a guest who can tell us why we're wrong on the first things we were talking about the need for diversity and etc. That would be interesting.
Yeah, no, that would be good. If somebody can articulate it in a way that would be convincing, I would like to hear that. Other than that, it seems like for me at the end of the day, um, one of those things where I don't know, I don't see. I'm not sure I understand the push for it. I'm not sure I understand this big need for it. When I mean, it just kind of happens, and if it doesn't happen, that's okay too.
The conversation.
No diversity.
All right. Well, I guess we'll be ending there. We might post this one because hopefully, I'm actually saying something good here, and you guys will be shot down by the listeners.
Oh,
Jeffrey means peacemaker.
well, I mean, I could see where you're gonna tingle the ears of quite a few, to be honest.
Tingle.
Yeah, tingle with the whole do not make those jokes. They're not funny. They're racist.
All right.
Oh my. Okay.
You all have a wonderful life.
All right. Good night.
Bye
Good
bye.
night.